So let's learn about the starchy staples. Now, the starchy staples are a group of plants that have stored a lot of the products of photosynthesis in the form of starch. Now, starch essentially is a lot of little glucose monomers linked and bonded together into a larger molecule. Our bodies love starch because it's easy to break those great big molecules into the small glucose chunks. And glucose is going to be the monomer, the molecule that our cells really want to use. So as humans, our big brains use lots and lots of glucose molecules. And so if you're studying and you start to crave a whole lot of sugar, there's a good reason for that. Your brain is burning up a lot of energy, a lot of the glucose, and so that's what you're going to crave. So when it comes to the starchy staples, it's no wonder that every group of people found plants in their environment that had lots of starch. Now, there is this interesting sort of dichotomy when it comes to starchy staples. Yes, you get some calories, you get some energy from the starch, but then it also makes you feel full. The starch doesn't have everything we need, so you feel full, but you have this potential to be malnourished, missing some of the nutrients that your cells need, that your body needs. And so one of the things we find is in groups that are dependent upon starchy staples, where the plant is mostly starch and nothing else, they tend to have high levels of malnutrition. So when we look at those groups of people who are dependent on cassava, and cassava, if you remember from the readings and the lecture slides, has less than 1% protein. Some of our other starchy staples, like sweet potatoes and sunchokes, actually have a lot of protein. So not only are you getting the starch, but you're also getting the protein. And in the case of sweet potatoes, you're also getting vitamin A. So you're getting a lot more of the micronutrients and even some of those other macronutrients that your body needs. But if you're dependent upon cassava, you're just not getting what your body needs, but at least you feel full. So we've always got to pay attention to that when we're studying different groups of people and we're studying these starchy staples that people became dependent on. Now, I want to do a little callback to the origins of agriculture. Remember that video about where Jared Diamond was talking about guns, germs, and steel, and he was in Papua New Guinea, and we got to see the people breaking down a sago palm tree. Do you remember how he was talking about how the sago palm takes so much energy to process, and that sago palm is mostly starch? That led to a huge problem for that group of people because, yeah, you get the calories, you're feeling full, but then you still need to have other things to supplement it. And then remember how he was talking about the forest around him being very low in other things that you might need or eat. So we have to always look at the type of starchy staple or food that the group was dependent on, and then really start to evaluate how they might have needed to supplement their diet. So when we're looking at the starchy staple lectures, we notice that there are lots of different plants that have stored a lot of the glucose molecules in the form of starch. But which part of the plant gets all of the starch, is storing the starch, can be wildly, wildly different. So I want to start with an onion. And when we take a look at the onion, all of this bulb structure is just huge leaves. Now, some of you may have noticed when we were making observations with the microscope lab that the onion cells from the bulb here, the onion skin, didn't have any nuclei. So what the onion will do is it will kick the nucleus out of the cell so that it can stuff that cell full of nothing but starches. The whole reason why the onion does this, or the garlic does this, and other bulbing type plants, is they store all this energy in these modified leaves. The idea is that the plant then goes dormant for several months. Once the weather changes, once the soils warm up, once there's more moisture in the environment, this plant can then start to grow again, and it's going to mobilize all of the starches here to send up new leaves, the green structure that a lot of us associate with green onions. So, our bulbs are modified leaves for storing starches. Our other modified structure for storing starches will be that taproot. And I love carrots because it's just, it's so obvious that this was one great big root. Now, the thing that's often missing when we look at the carrots is all of the little lateral roots. There's just a few little hairs that I can see coming off here along the edges. It looks just a little furry. But this is one great big modified taproot. Here we have the stem, and then coming off of this would have been that tuft of leaves. So some plants will store their starches in the roots. Now here's where it gets confusing. All the different ways a stem can look. So one modified stem is a rhizome, and that's where we've taken the stem that normally goes vertically and just laid it down underneath the soil about 1 to 2 inches. We'll see little scales along that stem. Those scales are the nodes, and those nodes can give us new stems and leaves, or they can give us roots down below. So, rhizome is the stem that's shifted horizontal. Another type of modified stem, a modified rhizome even, is the tuber. So here we've got kind of the traditional red potatoes. And these traditional red potatoes, everywhere we see these little eyes, that's a node on what is essentially a big chunky stem. I love these little fingerlings because I think these fingerlings show us a little bit better what that stem will look like. And I'm going to pull this really close so that you can see all of those little nodes. And hopefully that helps you to reimagine that vertical stem that we're familiar with just being tipped on its side and underneath the ground. This is what a tuber is, a modified rhizome. One thing about these little blue potatoes, what's making them blue are anthocyanins. That is a pigment molecule that we're going to talk about a lot this semester. The other thing that I have found is with these kind of blue potatoes, on the inside, it looks kind of weird. Now, this kind of coloration generally triggers in humans the sense of rotting, that this is not healthy, not something that we should eat. And yet, one of the things that's interesting is that people discovered that these were edible and okay, and they can work past that trigger of, I'm not supposed to eat this. But maybe you're like me, and I know that tastes like a normal potato. I know that it tastes good, but I can't get past the color. That blue coloration, it just, everything inside of me says, no, don't eat that. It can't be good. Some of us still have that very visceral reaction. Color is as important with food as taste and the actual nutritional quality. Okay, so we've done leaves, roots, and we've started looking at the stem. Now, the next type of modified stem that we have is a tuberous root, and this is jicama. It's one of my favorite starchy staples. This was picked up at the Beloit Farmers Market, where there are some people who are growing it locally, so that we can see more of what that plant grows like. We have this kind of vining structure that comes from up above. So we know that this is stem, and we can see the connection to what used to be the leaves, and we can even imagine the blades of those leaves. So then when we take a look at this structure, this enlarged chunk, and then the continuation going down here, this is all clearly root. This is going to be that modified portion of the root. It's going to be part stem, and it's going to be part root, and that's where we get the tuberous root from. Tuberous roots are part stem, part root. There's a little bit of both types of tissue, so they're a little bit confusing. Now, jicama is just packed with starches. It's not quite as sweet as something like a sweet potato, a yam, or even a sunchoke. So a lot of our starchy staples have this ratio of starch to sugar. The whole point of storing all of that energy is so that once the plant goes dormant, it can start to regrow again. It can put out new shoots. Now those new shoots will be genetically identical to the old shoots, be genetically identical to the original plant. Let's imagine this from a human point of view. So we're coming up on fall. Let's pretend that your body is going to die. Most of what we see is going to go away. It's not going to survive the winter. But we leave a finger. That finger in the ground has enough energy to essentially regrow your entire body. All the cells have all the same genetics as was in that original body in the original finger. So we get this asexual reproduction. We could do this year after year after year. Imagine regrowing your body for 10 years in a row. That's essentially what plants do. Now, clearly from humans, we don't get that opportunity. Once this body is done, it's done. We don't get to regrow. But it's one of those great, amazing qualities that our plants have, and especially our starchy staples. If you have any questions about the starchy staples, please let me know. Email me or drop into the Zoom office hours.